We often hear that AI is transformational, but the truth is we rarely hear how exactly it is being transformational, especially when it comes to the retail and CPG industries that historically have been in a everlasting stage of transformation around their data endeavors. So with me to talk about what is truly transformational about AI in these industries, I have Roberto Robles, who is the global lead of CPG and retail at Databricks. Retail and CPG companies have been talking about data transformation for a long time. Right now with AI, though, there's like a increased push for transformation, even though it feels like we never finished that first round of transformation. From your customer conversations, what has changed the most in the last year?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jose. So the way that I like to talk about it, right? If you think about retail and consumer goods, the goal is pretty straightforward. Retailers and consumer goods companies, they just want to have the right product at the right time, at the right place. So when you think about all the transformation when it comes to data and AI, it has always been focused on, how do you get the right product at the right time, at the right place. I think what has happened in the last year is one, there is a lot of noise in the industry. I think the introduction of Gen AI, tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, right? That has accelerated, the FOMO of what's happening with AI, and the use of AI tools. But I also think that there are a lot of macroeconomic factors that are accelerating the need to innovate and, getting to know your customer better, know your assortment better, right? So if you think about Gen Z, the way the Gen Z shops, right? If you think about the K-shaped economy where people making more money are spending more, but people making less money are actually cutting up the spend. So I think there is a combination of macroeconomic factors combined with, the noise, the FOMO, the bubble, everybody's talking about it, which is putting some pressure on retailers and consumer goods on, okay, what are we doing? Are we staying behind? Are we ahead of the curve? And I feel that most retailer and consumer goods are in a good spot, but right now is a pivotal moment to either are you going to be a fast forward thinking company or are you going to stay behind?
Now, you mentioned that moving forward or staying behind. You have a lot of executives that want to jump into AI because they don't want to be left behind. But the truth is, going back to my initial comment about the eternal stage of transformation for CPG and retailers, the data is still messy.
Yep.
Do you have product hierarchies, customer identity, inventory issues, promotions, loyalty, lots of stuff that is an essential part of the business, but the data is not always very clear nor accurate. Given that, where do you see the biggest gap between what companies want AI to do, what AI is capable of doing, and what they're actually able to do with the data that they have in place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think there's like 3 questions there. So I'm gonna try to take one at each. So yeah, right now there's a lot of executives that are thinking about, are we staying behind? Should we move forward? Where do we fall on this AI curve, right? What I can tell you though is that where we have seen most of the success when it comes to data and AI is where you have executives that recognize that in order to be successful on data and AI, you have to fix your foundation. Building your semantic layer, making sure that you have clean data, making sure that all that happens before you start, evaluating outputs. That's where we have been success and companies that invest on getting the data right and building the semantics right. Now, in retail and consumer goods, one of the biggest challenges that the industry has is that if you think about the supply chain, right? You have a CPG that is producing the product. That CPG is probably using a distributor. That distributor is putting the product on a retailer which owns the point of sale. And then that retailer is actually interacting with the consumer. But the consumer may also interact with the manufacturer, right? So I think when retail and consumer goods, it's so complex. And the biggest challenge that we see in the industry is that retailers and consumer goods companies are not talking to each other, right? Historically, there has been some data exchange, but that data exchange has been very cumbersome. Retailer doesn't want to share a lot of data with the consumer goods company. The consumer goods company ends buying data from third parties, right? So first and most, I think from a Databricks perspective, something that we're trying to do is we're helping the industry on like, hey, if you focus on the end consumer, going back to having the right product at the right time at the right place, this data collaboration, between all the supply chain needs to happen. That's the first starting point, right? What we're seeing is that some use cases, some AI use cases, the output is not as expected. It may not necessarily be because the data is messy. It may be because the companies didn't even have the data required on the first place, right? So the way that we're thinking about it, the way that we're helping customers is like, let's start by you getting the right data that you need. Once you have the data, then you can start talking about semantics, transformations, and all the things that happen on top of it.
I want to touch on the retail and CPG disconnect.
Yep.
Is it an organizational problem? Is it a technology problem? Like, why is there really that disconnect?
I mean, being honest, I don't think it's a technology problem. I mean, I think the technology is there. I feel that there has been certain level of lack of trust, right? And if you think about it, right, if you're a retailer, you want to protect your business, right? So it's always on your head of, if I share more data with this company, what if they start selling more products in my competition in another retailer, right? So I think it has been a little bit lack of trust. I think there's also has been a little bit not paying attention to the importance, the criticality of. And right now, as AI use cases start to accelerate, I think people are realizing like, oh, should we need that data, right? So I think it's a combination of a little bit lack of trust, like, hey, what are you going to do with that data? That's my data. Sometimes it's shoppers' data, sometimes it's brands' data. I mean, it's a gold mine. I mean, if you think about data is the moat, right? So it's a combination of, can we trust you? What are you going to do with the data? Do you have good intentions, right? And the second piece is, I think finally, companies are realizing like, yes, man, if I get that piece of the puzzle that I'm missing, then the chances of my AI project use case to be successful is gonna, go up by X amount.
As someone that lived in that space for a little bit in that supply chain manufacturing space, yeah, I think it's also that distrust, to your point. And also, I think a failure to understand really what you could get out of that investment. Because the truth is, if there is an industry that understands cost and margins better than anyone, I think it's CPG and
100%.
manufacturing and all of those, right? So I think that if there is more awareness as to, hey, by understanding what's happening up and down your supply chain, this is the financial impact that it would bring to you, and perhaps just better partnerships in the industry, I think you would potentially see those margins expand a little bit, or at least just have less wastage in different areas.
Yeah, 100%. So we recently, had an event, Invent and Build. We brought the largest retailer. We brought some of these consumer goods leaders there, and two consumer good companies right there. One of the largest Latin American bakeries around the world, and one of the largest consumer goods companies around the world. They were sharing some success stories, right? So the bakery company said like, hey, since we started getting data and collaborating on this with the largest retailer, they were able to achieve a 95% on-shelf availability for their products across all the stores. So, which is impressive, right? I mean, the amount of operational excellence and amount of data that you need and the insights and that you need to achieve a 95% on-shelf availability it's monumental. But this was achieved. Why? Because now the retailer is sharing data with the consumer goods company. The consumer goods company is sharing data back, right? In the other hand, the other company, one of the largest consumer goods companies, FIFA is coming pretty soon, and they give an example of how with the data they're getting with the retailer, they're feeding all that into models and forecasting models, right? So for them, they want to make sure on, okay, there's a stadium, there's gonna be how many attendees, our demand is gonna spike, right? So how do you forecast on the nearby retailer stores, right? How do you forecast to make sure that you have enough products for the 10,000, 50,000 additional folks that you're going to have on a city, attending one of these events? So I think at the end of the day, the more these companies, the more enterprises realize that one, when collaboration happens, the end consumer is the one benefiting. And two is that you want to talk about AI. Yes, semantics. Yes, and we're going to touch on that. But if you don't have the data, just the start point of the data, then how can you start thinking about AI use cases if you don't even have, the data that you need to fuel some of those use cases?
Yeah, I mean, the more data points you have, whether for AI or for old school ML type stuff, the more data points you have,
exactly,
the more likely you're gonna run into success when doing your experimentations and understanding, how to fix your supply chain or make it as optimal and efficient as possible. What actual use cases are you seeing right now for AI in some of those settings? And also, I want to know what use cases sounded great on a presentation, but perhaps just didn't turn out the way that in the industry expected.
So I think in terms of use cases, right? I mean, there are many use cases. We recently we published an interview with the CEO of Albertsons in India, and I think the way he summarized it was spot on, right? So you have machine learning to better predict. So that's where you have a lot of use cases on how can you predict better, right? And prediction can be predicting, your inventory. Predicting can be predicting how many, customers are you going to have at the store. Predicting can be, when is the next storm going to hit and I need to send more products, right? But you have the first layer of machine learning, which we're still seeing a lot of use cases under the label of AI, which is just basically machine learning, right? But it's all about predictive, right? The second layer, which that's where we're seeing a lot of success, is Gen AI. So Gen AI is how can I get answers? How can I ask questions and get answers, right? I think one of the biggest challenges that we see in retail and consumer goods is what we call the dashboard fatigue. Some of these companies have 11,000, 12,000, 13,000 dashboards, man. I'm not gonna name any one of them, but they have like 13,000 dashboards, man, and they still can't get the answer of the questions that they have, right? So when I think about Gen AI, man, most of the use cases that we're seeing, and again, I don't want to emphasize on one specifically, but one of the use cases is like, hey, I just want to ask a question, right? I see a metric, I see that my sales are down, I see that my inventory is down. I want to know why by asking a question without me having to either do pivot tables on an Excel or going to 20 different dashboards, right?
I think what you meant is go to 10 different dashboards, then export them into Excel, put them all into a pivot table, and then hopefully you'll get your answer.
Or worst case scenario, man, which happened on my previous live, is you don't see the answer on the 10 dashboards, so you talk to your tech team creates another dashboard, man, right? So yeah, I mean, that's the second layer. And the third layer is Agentic, right? And Agentic is more for automating processes, right? We're starting to see a lot of use cases where I want to use agent to make process more efficient. Right now, for example, in marketing, one of our biggest customer, Reckitt, they have a public customer success story on how they're using agents to automate a lot of the marketing steps. That being, it used to take a lot of time for me to take a PDF and Excel, extract information. So now you can use an agent, to extract all those data points, all those insights. So for campaign creation, for creative, creating images and all that. So I don't see them as specific use cases. I see them more on those three layers, right? Machine learning for predicting, agentic AI for getting, answers to answers to questions that you have. And the last layer is the agentic, which is how can we automate some of the processes, right? When you take those three layers, you can put those three layers on any department: supply chain, marketing, HR, finance, and there's gonna be success depending on the pain points that the business has. Your second question about maybe something that didn't provide results that the industry was expecting. I don't have anyone in mind. I think right now there is a lot of noise on agentic commerce. I think there's definitely a lot of noise on agentic commerce, right?
Actually, I recently did an interview around that with Raj
Nice.
from Databricks, and it was a great video.
Yeah, so I mean, I think right now it's not that it has failed. I think there was a lot of excitement, and then you saw all these retailers announcing partnerships with. Now you can shop all through all these agentic tools. I think it is too soon. For me, in my opinion, right, one of the biggest gaps, it goes back to the data, right? I think for agentic commerce to be successful, companies have to invest in their product catalog. Think about a product catalog. Today, your product catalog has item, description, ratings, right? Very basic information. For agentic commerce to be successful, your product catalog has to have intent, summary of reviews, man, like is occasion, man, like is this something that I wear on a date or all that has to evolve. And once you have the catalog, how do you share that? There's some steps that need to happen. So I think that on agentic commerce, I feel personally some companies pull the trigger too soon. There's definitely a trend there. There's definitely something happening there where Gen Z is going there, is shopping. I think probably the industry was expecting something to happen faster, right? And I think there's still a journey and things are still changing that nobody knows, what's going to happen or what's the best answer to that.
If it takes off well, you want to be ahead of the curve there.
Yep.
My personal take on this is you have to have the data right. I think there is a future in agentic commerce. To your point, that's how a lot of people are shopping. I was recently interacting with some folks, and literally their thing was like, "Well, we don't care about a website. We just wanted to, can I chat with it?"
Yeah.
So I think there is a future there. But going back to your point, the data does need to be right, and organizations need to not treat AI as the magic solution to their problems, but 100%. An accelerator to fix the things that they've struggled with, right?
Yeah.
So, data quality issues, whenever you can, throw an LLM at it to help address some of those needs. It might not be perfect, but if you can fix 95% of the issues and, how in your categories and all your segments and all that stuff, and, with LLMs, might as well do it.
Yeah. Yeah, so a very specific example, Josue, that I can give you is right now, when you take the three layers that I mentioned, right? Predictive, getting answers to the questions you ask, and an agentic for automating. But one particular example is what we call customer 360, right? From a retail and consumer goods perspective, it's very hard to understand your consumer. Why? Because you have Roberto shopping, online, Roberto shopping at the store, Roberto shopping at the mobile app, right? Roberto submitting cases, Roberto shopping other websites, right? So that customer 360, is so fundamental because that's the cornerstone, the starting point to power any, marketing use case that you, advertising, personalization, promotions, all of that starts with that customer 360. So right now we're definitely seeing, a trend. We're helping a lot of customers on how can you get better at knowing your customer, and how can you create that customer 360? Because once you have that, uh, as I mentioned, there is a ton of use cases where if you put the consumer at the center of every decision, it powers, many use cases down the road.
And I want to say that the concept of customers 360 in itself is not new. I think it's been around for a long time, but I think that for the first time with, the last 2 or 3 years worth of technology, it's easier for, you don't have to be a Fortune 10 company or something like that to build something like that and spend a ton of money on it. I think it's become a lot more affordable to actually build something that's even better than was available before.
100%, right? I think one of the challenges in the past was, all these different data points typically are on different tools, typically are on different data sources, different formats, right? And the challenge was, how do you bring all these together? Which, if you think about it, is the exact concept of the lakehouse, right? It doesn't matter the source, it doesn't matter the structure, it doesn't matter where it is. We allow you to bring all these together. So exactly right. I mean, the concept of a customer data platform has been there forever. The concept of a composable data platform is something fairly new, right? But to your point, we're seeing more and more organizations from all sizes, from extra large to medium to small on, hey, we need help. We truly want to understand our customer. We want to build this customer 360, because everybody understands, right, that a lot of the AI use cases like personalization, promotions, even advertising, right? It all depends on, I need to know my customer. I need to know my segments, right? I need to know who am I targeting? Why am I targeting? And it all goes back to right product at the right time, at the right place, right?
Real time is something that a lot of vendors sell. A lot of executives demand, but ultimately something that people never quite align as to what real time actually means, nor the real value that it actually represents to customers. In retail and CPG, what is the true value that real time can bring to solve certain challenges?
It's a great question, and you touch on I'll say, sensitive topic, right? I've been on those shoes where, hey, we need real time data, and real time data is gonna fix everything. In reality, I'll tell you, it depends, right? So if you're thinking about advertising, if I'm Roberto going to retailer.com website, I do need real time data if you want to surface an ad. So that's a point where, yes, when having the data and being able to surface that as soon as I open the website with the pop-up, right? So there are certain use cases where I think real-time data, or as we call it on my previous job, near real-time data, it's very necessary. But when it comes to day-to-day operations, man, I'm going to give you one example, right? Let's say that it's 2 p.m. You get a real-time notification that you're about to get out of stock on a product, right? Well, it's 2 p.m. What do? Like, do you send a truck right now? Do you wait? You still have 6 more hours of operations, right? So the question has always been, like, if you get real-time data at 8 a.m., the data is going to be still outdated by 3 p.m. So what you can actually do, right? I feel that there's ways to solve for that. So, for example, one of the things that I did on my previous job was, instead of having real-time data, you can have a 1-day-old data, but broken down by hour, right? So you can send those signals, going again to data collaboration, you can send signals saying, like, hey, the day before, at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., right? And that way you can start building patterns. You can start building intelligence. So, on Wednesday at 7 a.m., right, you start building intelligence. So it's not reactive, it's more building those patterns and those historical data. That's, I'll say, is way more beneficial than having real-time signals now. Now, what I'll tell you though is where I see the industry going is I think in the next probably year or year and a half, you're gonna have agents to agents, right? So you're probably gonna have a procurement agent talking to a supply chain agent. For me, that's where real-time data is gonna be extremely valuable, right? Because you're taking the human out of the equation. So you have an agent sending a real-time signal to an agent that knows how to react real time. So I mentioned the word real time a lot. It's a very complicated topic, right? I know a lot of customers that they try to build an ROI on we're gonna consume massive amount of data. Is there gonna be an ROI or no? And what I can tell you is I always tell our customers focus on the outcome. I mean, what's the outcome that you want to achieve? And then you can back that to, okay, do I really need real-time data, right? So don't start with real-time data. Start with this is what we want to achieve, and then you'll find your means to get to that outcome. That being with D-1 data, real-time data, near real-time data, right? But I'll say that when agents, as we start seeing more agentic agents to agents, for me, that's gonna be the true unlocked where I send a real-time signal, my agent sends a real-time signal, and then another agent automatically picks that and automatically does something, right?
It's when humans are, for the most part, fully out of the equation in that perspective in terms of controlling what's happening with that real-time information. I think that's where it matters.
That's my opinion. That's what I think. That's what I'm seeing. Because as long as you have a human in the equation, well, humans, you cannot expect your employees to real time be checking the phone in real time. I mean, it's there's always gonna be a delay on the time that it's gonna take a human to take an action. So then the question goes back to then why do you need real time data, right? If you go back to the advertising world, the example that I gave is all automated. I mean, you put the beats, so everything happens, and then the pop up happens, right? It's semi-automated, right? So I think that's where I think it's not that far away. I think we're a couple of months where we're gonna start seeing, especially in supply chain, a lot of agentic flows. A purchase order agent talking to a supply chain agent. That's where the true unlocked on real time data is gonna come. Again, there has to be an ROI. I'm gonna build all the systems. I'm gonna have all these, direct live pipelines, whatever you call it. Is there gonna be an ROI? We'll have to see.
Yeah. Manufacturing is a great example where real time really, really matters. And when you go to the other tail then of the supply chain is your actual customers.
Yep.
For them, the real time part matters too. And I think of, you think of the bullwhip effect in supply chain, where one thing triggers a chain down the supply chain. I feel like it's a matter of that where retailers and they're going to find themselves, they're themselves in like the middle of that tail, and they're going to feel that whip effect from both sides of the spectrum. So
I think the key though is regardless of if it's real-time data, near real-time data, I think the key though is you need a platform that can help you with that, right? You need a platform that allows you to process petabytes of data, allows you to, build integrations that support, again, that being real-time data, not real-time data, that allows you to put the governance, to keep an eye who is doing what with what, which systems are feeding from the real-time data, right? So I think building that foundation, having that platform, and I think that's where we, Databricks, we play a key role on making sure that you have the foundation. Again, the technology is there, the use cases.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always tell people, like, when I started using Databricks, I was working with relatively small amount of data in a very much of a batch workloads that update once a day. It's just fine. But over time, you've been exposed to a lot more businesses where more and more that real time approach or near time is a real need, and the platform is pretty much the same platform.
Yep.
Because it adjusts according to your business needs. It's a foundation. It's not just a data foundation, it's a platform foundation too that you have. So
yeah. Let me give you a real example this way. There's something that we have been helping customers called the Monday morning. So Monday morning for every consumer goods companies, right, it's not real-time data, right? Because you have the weekend, but every Monday at 8 a.m., you're going to plan the whole week. You're going to plan your assortment strategy. You're going to apply your category strategy. You're going to plan your promotion strategy, right? So one of the areas that we've been helping our customers is how can you create this Monday morning, Monday quarterback report? And the way that we do it is, yes, there's a component of ingesting some real-time external signals like weather and all stuff, but there's a lot of data prep, historical data that we put on the back end, right? So what I'll say though is, if you focus more on the output, the use case is every Monday morning. Again, I don't care if it's real-time, historical, but every Monday at 9 a.m., I want to have the data that I need to make the decisions for the week. Then you go backwards. Okay, which real signals do I need to fetch at Monday 5 a.m. versus which data can be maybe 1-2 days old, right? But at the end of the day, that's one of the use cases, honestly, that I'm seeing picking up a lot within our customer base, and we're helping on, getting the data in the first place, transforming the data in the second place, and then the whole data consumption, right? The fact that on the Monday morning you can ask questions using Genie. What should I do, and all that is completely transforming. It's completely transforming the industry.
Databricks just came out with the ability to schedule your Databricks Genie research agent, so that, say, at 8 a.m. you want to get your report with all your latest data points and all the latest actions that you should take. You could have that come in at 8 a.m. if you want it on a Monday. You want to ask it more questions, you can go ahead and ask it more questions to whatever follow-ups you have. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think that's again, when we think about use cases, when we think about what's truly changing the industry, something as simple as that, right? Something as simple as completely changing the way employees look at analytics, man, and spend their Monday morning, man, is completely changing the game.
Let's talk about a topic that rarely gets addressed: AI agents. Obviously, I'm joking here, but the question is, what makes agents genuinely useful to business users?
That's a great question. I think there's definitely a lot of buzz around the industry on agents, right? And what we're seeing is now every tool you think of has agents everywhere. When I think about how the business can benefit from an agent, is if I go back to, machine learning for predicting, Gen AI for getting questions, answering questions, and then Agentic for automating. I think for me right now, specifically on retail and consumer goods, where we're seeing a lot of success is where you truly document a workflow. You truly, as a business person, you document all the steps that you do to complete a task. And again, that can be creating an order, that can be fixing a refrigerator at a convenience store. But where we have seen a lot of success is where you have pretty well documented workflows or processes. And then you think about, again, you don't go straight to the agent. You think about what portion of this process can be automated. Which steps can I take out of the way, and can I automate for someone to do on my behalf. That's where you can plug in an agent, and that's where we have seen success, right? So let me give you one specific use case for one of our customers, 7-Eleven. We have a published blog on this. But what was happening is, you have all these convenience stores, right? And then you have a fridge or you have equipment. And then every time that one equipment was failing, what was the process? The process was, okay, the store manager probably has to call the maintenance guys, right? The maintenance guy says, okay, which equipment it is. Let me go to the manual. Let me try to find the right manual, the right page, right? To see exactly what type of tools or parts do I need to bring, right? So again, that's a very well documented process workflow. So now, what 7-Eleven did is all the manual, all that stuff can be taken care of by an agent, right? So now you have an agent. So if I'm the maintenance guy, I can just go there and say equipment 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, failure X, right? And then the agent does all the manual task of researching, going to the content, and resulting on saving time, right? So that's one of the examples that I give. But I was doing a presentation for some business users, one of the biggest CPGs, right? And I had a pretty fancy technical presentation, and the first question that I got was, "What's an agent?" I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I don't know how you define an agent. But yeah, just to kind of recap, right? I think on consumer goods, on retail, if you think about any process that you have well documented that requires a lot of manual innovation, you probably have an opportunity to bring an agent to help you automate. And the last piece is you need governance, right? You need the ability to make sure that, okay, I have the process, I know the pain point, I'm going to put the agent there. Not the last piece, a very important piece is making sure that you have governance just to monitor, okay, is this person, is the automation working, so that's where you need to catalog, and all that plays a key role of making sure, that the results are what you're expecting.
Ultimately, what is going to separate the companies that succeed in the AI race, specifically the retailers and CPG companies that succeed in this AI race, from those that perhaps tried AI yet fail to actually put anything into production?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josue. So I think about it in two different ways. I think we often forget that businesses have people. So I think the answer to that question, there is a technology answer and there is a people answer, right? So companies that are going to win are those companies that embrace AI as part of the culture, meaning there has to be change management. Everybody needs to adopt AI, from the CEO all the way to the analyst, right? So there's definitely a people aspect, and leaders, the C-suite, they have to start infusing, and making sure that folks within the organization are not afraid, but actually, they embrace the change that we're living. That's the people aspect. From a technology aspect, it's as simple as the data. Whoever invests on getting the right data, whoever invests on building the proper, bronze, silver, gold layer, and whoever invests on building a right semantic layer is going to win. Because at the end of the day, the models, all that is a commodity. Every day it changes, every day. So the thing though is, companies that invest on the people and companies that invest on having the foundations where they need to be are the companies that in 1 year or less, they're going to be seeing the biggest benefits of, this amazing trend that we're seeing, around the world with data and AI.
Data as an accelerator, or I should say AI as an accelerator to the business's expertise.
Exactly. Yep.
why should businesses and organizations choose to leverage Databricks as their preferred platform for data and AI when there are many options out there, hyperscalers, etc.?
Yeah, so what I will say though is open source, right? I mean, when you think about the capabilities that our platform has and the fact that most of them are open source, that's a sentiment of, at the end of the day, I truly believe that we, from a Databricks perspective, we're kind of on a journey to change the industry, right? So the fact that we allow you to bring any data, regardless of the source, structure, right, open source. The fact that we have the best governance product, which is super critical, in the industry with Unity Catalog, right? The fact that we allow you to transform securely all these raw data into insights. And lastly, that the fact that we allow you to democratize, which at the end of it, that's the end goal, right? That we allow you to democratize the data across your org with AI, BI, Genie apps, right? And all of that on an open source. I think at the end of the day, right? What I tell customers is that the thing about Databricks is if you're not happy, you can just take all the stuff and move.
Take all your data. Yeah,
exactly.
You can take your data. You have to make some tweaks and changes in some of your code and whatnot, from like the Databricks specific flavor to the one that is more available out there. But at the end of the day, it's simple stuff.
Exactly, right. And that's what I tell customers. Like, man, the fact that you're working with a company that is giving you all these capabilities, right? And at the end of the day, honestly, it's just not very straight. I mean, you can just take your stuff and move away. That's a sentiment of truly, kind of our end goal is to help organizations, right? If our customers are successful, we're successful. So there is a lot of emphasis on what's your problem? Let us help you solve that problem.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for your time, Roberto.
Thank you. Pleasure.